Good morning, everybody. This is Blaster Toad here. We're over in Unreal Engine. Playing with Unreal Engine 4.14.2. Excuse me. It is 7 a.m. I started this at 6. But then I got it real rambly. So I'm restarting this tutorial, and what this tutorial is a run by the seat of our pants from the basics tutorial on building a platformer. Because why not? All the other tutorials you find out there, or at least the majority of them, get into bigger stuff like AI and procedural generation and wall climbing, and it's like, sweet, I know how to climb a wall, but how do I make my character move? Okay, there always seems to be like that first step is lacking. So we're going to do a from the ground up brand new project where we're going to build a platformer from scratch. So, yay! It actually is exciting though, so don't let my tone discourage you. Okay, so we're in Unreal. We opened Unreal. We are going for a new project. It is going to be blank. We're going to start with nothing. There's going to be no starter content. So if this is on starter content, go no starter content. We're doing our own thing. And my premise of my platformer is going to be a robot that has to collect spare parts as he runs through levels. So I'm going to call it Nuts for Guts. Okay. Loading things. And I am just going to open Skype to get me some names. Because it is Brandon and Kevin that you guys have to thank for this tutorial. As it was after a meeting helping those guys with their game that I decided, hey, a platformer would be a cool little way to start a tutorial. So, thank you, Brandon and Kevin. Okay, so, first things first, we're going to tick this little thingy over here. And we've now got this content thing. And we're going to start adding some content. Go figure, that's what happens right there. This is basically the layout of our game. So, the folder structure and the logic of how everything's saved for us. So we are going to do a new folder, and we are going to call this Blueprints. Okay? And under the Blueprint folder, I want another new folder, and I want Player. Also under Blueprints, so I'm going to right-click Blueprints again, new folder. I want Environment. Okay? Or maybe, hazards. Environment. Sure, we'll do hazards. Okay, and this is gonna be everything that we run into in our level, any obstacles. Okay? I am going to do another new folder, and we are going to call this... we're going to keep our levels separate, so not levels, we'll have this as enemies. Okay, so we've got our player, we've got the hazards they'll run into, we've got enemies. Okay, awesome. Okay, and I think that is that. Oh, we're gonna do not right-clicking blueprints, but right-clicking content. We're gonna do a new folder. We're gonna do levels. Okay, and we also want a new folder called widgets. Okay, so blueprints are all the things that are gonna do stuff. Like this is our main workings. Okay, our levels is where we're gonna store these levels that we make, which are going to include a bunch of parts from here. And then widgets is the menu system in Unreal, the heads-up display, that sort of thing. Okay, so now that we've got those folders set up, we have to start populating them. Otherwise, they go away. When we exit this project and load back in, all these will be gone because they're empty. So, for our level here, we will hit save in the corner. We are going to click the folder we want it in, and we're just going to call this test map. This is where we are going to test all of our things. So test map, save. Yay, it's right there. Under widgets, we will go right click, user interface. You might have to scroll down for this. I know in previous versions of the engine I had to scroll down to get user interface. And then we've got widget blueprint. We're going to get our widget blueprint, and we are going to get main menu, or we're going to type in main menu. Or you could do start menu. However you want to name these, the naming is unimportant as long as you remember what you put. We are going to do a game over screen. We are going to do a victory. And we will do a dialogue. Yes. Okay. So we'll have the main menu to start the game. We'll have our victory screen. Hey, we won. We'll have our hey, we died. And we'll have a dialogue to give the character little prompts, or to give the player prompts as they move along. Okay. We've already got a level there. Under blueprints, under enemies, we are going to right-click, add a blueprint class pawn. It's going to be a long time before we get over to this guy. So I'm just going to call him bad guy, because we're not going to deal with him for a while. Hazards. The first hazard I want to make with you all is a switch. So we'll do a blueprint. We will do an actor, and we're actually going to call this class underscore switch. Okay, and then we are going to copy that, so duplicate, and I want class underscore switched underscore actor. Okay, so this is the switch. And this is the thing that gets switched. Okay? So this can be doors, this can be traps, this can be whatever. Okay, and we'll get to that in a bit. And then in their player, we want to get a new blueprint class, and we're going to do character. Okay, I originally wanted to do this with the pawn, but that would have meant building a lot of our own movement. So we're just going to use the character, and we're going to call that player character. Okay, if you want to do underscores there, if you just want to capitalize each new word, just remember you cannot put spaces in your names. Unreal Engine will enforce that for you. And then one more thing we want to set up, which will be important to us, is if we go back to the root of blueprints, because it's not going to be an enemy, a hazard, or a player. This is going to control everything. We are going to do a blueprint class, and if we hit all classes here, we're going to do a game mode. We're going to get game mode base. Okay, and this is going to be our core underscore game mode. Okay, or you could do GM, or, like, for me, it could have been Nuts and Guts GM, Nuts and Guts game mode, whatever. Okay, and then we're just going to go up to the file and save all. Make sure that everything's saved for us. Awesome. Okay, so now up in the top corner, as you see my cursor disappearing here under our logo, we are going to hit Edit and Project Settings. Going to wait for that to load. First things first, let's go maps and modes. Okay, maps and modes. We've got default game mode right here. We are going to set that to our game mode we just made. So for me, it's core game mode. So core underscore game mode. And then we're going to tick that little arrow to show all this. Okay, we'll deal with that later. And then, actually, we'll deal with that now. So, default pawn class. Okay, so select our game mode. Under default pawn class here, we want our player character. So, mine, I just named player character. So, click. You can either find yours in the list, or you can start typing it out. And there you go. Okay, and then we'll leave the rest of that. Now, over here, under the engine heading, we are going to find input. And this is where we're going to add our buttons. Okay, so under axes mappings, okay, we are going to add a movement input. And under movement input, we will do a D on the keyboard. And we're going to add a new one, and we're going to do an A on the keyboard. A. There you go. And D will be our positive, A will be our negative. So an axis is a value between two numbers, okay? Or a scale between two values, I should say. The scale between two values, in this case our values being positive and -1. So this way, if I tell something to move on this axis, or on this axis, it'll move positive, or it'll move negative. So I don't have to set up a bunch of separate button maps over here. What we do want for our button or action maps is a action key. So we're going to call this action input. There we go. And I'm going to make that spacebar. I like that for our kind of keyboard mouse based movement stuff. Okay, so we've got spacebar for our action input. We've got D and A for our movement input. So everything can be played with the left hand. There we go. And then we just get to close this. Okay. And now we are 12 minutes in here. We've done some setup. Let's get our character moving so it feels like we've actually done something in our game. We're going to go over to our player. And we've got our player character. And with player character, it gives us a few things. So it gives us this capsule component, which is basically the main bounds, or not basically, it is the main bounds of our character. We've got the arrow, just showing us which way is forward. It does not show up in-game, so don't worry about it. And the mesh. So this is where we would have our skeletal mesh, our actual visual representation of our character. For now, we are going to add our own. We are going to add a cube. And we're just going to have it Boxman. So this is the body of Boxman. They'll just name it as such, body. I'm going to click out here on the cube, and then R. R is going to give me my scaling tools. We're just going to scale this to fit in our thingy. We'll leave a little bit there, yeah. You know, he looks kind of stout that way, so let's scale him in and scale him in. There is Boxman. And then we want a camera. So let's add a camera. There we go. And with our camera, because it's a platformer and that blue arrow is our forward direction, we're going to move our camera out. We are going to rotate our camera, so if we can hit E to rotate our camera. I always like to give it a bit of a pitch. I think it just looks a little better. And then W to get back to our translate tools. There we go. Compile, save. Okay. Now to make it actually do stuff. Okay, so we've set up our character. We made him all pretty. He's a box now. We've got a camera so we can actually see our character. Now we're going to go over to the event graph. And the event graph is where all the cool stuff happens. We're going to get rid of what they already have here. We like to start fresh. And we are going to get our two inputs. So those axes and action maps we just made. We type in input, and then we called our forward movement. Or did I just do movement input? Yeah, movement input right there. And then action input. There we go. So with our movement input, this is what's going to move us side to side in our platformer. So what we want to do is very simply pull off of our little triangle here. We're going to add movement. Seriously, that's it. The movement that Unreal has set in for us is pretty simple. Okay, we're going to get this axis value. So we're going to pass the movement a positive or negative value. And then we have to set the direction it travels in. So with this being a platformer, we could hardcode this to say, okay, he's always traveling in the X direction. We're going to do it 1 scaled by this number and blah, blah, blah. But I really hate hardcoding things. I'd prefer to set everything dynamically. That way, if we change something in the future, we turn them around or whatever, then, hey, we don't have to come in and change all this. So, we are going to right-click. So, that's how I'm getting this menu, is right-click. Then in the search bar, get actor, because this is still an actor class, even though it's a character, it's an actor class. And we're going to get its forward vector. Get actor forward vector right there. And that's just his forward direction. Okay, no matter which way he's spun in the world, forward from the actor is always going to be this direction. Okay, you're going to add movement in his forward direction. Perfect. Then on our action key, when we press our action key, we are going to jump. Really, that's it. Like, it doesn't get much easier. Unreal has all the movement built in here for us, so things can be pretty stupid simple. Okay, so we're going to minimize this here. So, if everything's correct, and our game mode has... Actually, we're just going to double-click our game mode. And we are going to tell it over here that our player pawn class... Game session, game state, game controller, player state. Where is our player pawn? Oh, default pawn. There we go. You just want to make sure that this is set to player character, or whatever you happen to call your player. And then we're going to compile and save. Okay, so now when we hit play, it should put our character right there in the middle. Yay! And we can move, and we can jump. So there we go. We might want to play with our camera just a little bit. So let's bring our camera out. And then something I always like to do with Unreal is right here where it says play, like if I start playing here, it just shows me this window. But if we hit the little arrow down here, we can tell it to play in a new editor window. So see, it opens it up wherever we are. So that way we don't have to change screens always back to the main editor. And we've got our player moving. We're zoomed out a little further back, which I think is nice. So there we go. And that's that for our first episode in this tutorial series. So we've got our game set up so that there is all of our content folders. And we're ready to start working on things. And we've got places to put all those things as we work on them. And we've got our character with a very basic movement. In the next episode, we'll come back and we're going to work on that switch. So you're going to do the switch and the switched actor. We're going to see what we can do with that. We're probably going to make a door. I think doors are cool. So we're going to make a door. And then, yeah, we'll be back for the next episode when we make a door. Awesome. See you then.